Hello, everyone.
I'm gonna make the whole world deaf from all of your screams. Doodle-a-doodle-a-doo.
Hello everyone, I'm TCR and today we're going to be talking about Sonic Movie 3, which is less than a month away. I'm so excited for this film and I've had a blast with the Year of Shadow campaign so far. Seriously, my PC short-circuited right after I watched the first trailer.
Is far beyond anything we've ever encountered. Shadow's
He
story
did just
began
get out
a
of
lot
water.
like your Sonic.
Oh my gosh!
But were you
Sonic X Shadow Generations was also fun, and I absolutely adored the prequel animations that Sega released before the game launched. With that being said, I've wanted to do something for the movie's release because you guys know I'm a Sonic fan, you've seen my animations and stuff. So I'm doing a theory video. Seriously, I've not seen anyone do this theory, so I wanted to get my thoughts out there and see what you all think. Also, as I'm recording this, I know that the world premiere has released. I have not seen anything about it. I have not looked at leaks. So if you know anything about that, I ask that you please, don't spoil it in the comments for others. And I hope you enjoy this video regardless, and maybe you can point out what I got right or wrong. I do want to say, this theory could be 100% wrong, and I'm just crazy, because even I'm pretty skeptical that my theory isn't true, and I'll explain more on why later. But hey, it's fun, and if I'm right, then Jeff Fowler, you're legally obligated to put Big in the next movie, specifically as Duke Nukem, make him look like Duke Nukem and make him sound like Duke Nukem. So we've seen a lot from the trailers and clips that have been released. We've seen Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, Tom and Other Humans, Shadow riding a motorcycle, and a lot of other interesting stuff. But there's one particular scene from the first trailer that I haven't seen talked about a lot, and I'm talking about this scene.
Shadow found only pain and loss.
So after looking at this scene, I went over it a few times, and then I noticed a few things that were funny to me. So here's my theory. Gun is gaslighting Sonic and his friends, and the shot we see here is a false retelling of events. Also, spoiler warning, there will be spoilers for Sonic stuff, the Sonic Movie 3 possibly, and just Sonic stuff in general. So be careful or don't watch the video. As you guys know, if you're a big Shadow fan or just a Sonic fan, Shadow gets sent to Earth by his best friend / soulmate Maria after she gets shot, and then everything else, blah blah blah, you know the deal. If you don't, the intro sequence to Shadow Generations sums it up pretty well. However, in the first Sonic trailer that released, we see this shot of what looks like Shadow, and Gerald over someone, who is definitely Maria. And in contrast to the games, it looks like Maria is dying right in front of Shadow and Gerald, and has been injured by an explosion, and not by
A bullet.
So, if this is how it went in the games, how come we see this shot in the first trailer that released? It's quite possible that they're just going to do things different in the movie. Obviously, the movies aren't an exact copy of the games, and I actually like that. But this does make me wonder, do Maria and Shadow actually grow up in space together, and does Maria send Shadow to Earth the same way that she does in the games? The first thing I've heard people say is that in the movies, the Ark is actually going to be located on Earth. But there are a couple things I find fishy about this. So, in the games, the Ark is located in space, and one of the reasons Maria is on it is because of her chronic illness and how the low gravity mitigates it. In the first trailer, we see in another shot, we see the Ark rise out of the River Thames, and this makes sense since the government wouldn't just be like, yeah, just stick it out in the open, yeah, people aren't gonna care, yeah, we're right next to Disneyland. My question then is, if it's not on Earth's surface, where is it? It could be on Area 51, I guess, or like a desert or something, but that seems so weird. But it's not going to be in the ocean where it's pressurized. But if it's not on Earth, the only answer would be it's in space, just like the games. And if that's the case, then why are there cars and tanks in the background? The Ark is shown to be quite smaller than it is in the games, so I don't see why they'd need them for transport. So that's one inconsistency. Now, I will say one thing about the reason why this scene might not be a lie. And I mean this scene, which is definitely the same scene as this one, indicated by the lighting and the ashes, and Shadow would definitely react like this. I'm going to talk about that a little more in depth later, though. For now, I want you guys to have a look at this scene.
Life's all about the choices we make.
NANI?!
So, okay, this shot. This is 100% the capsule that Shadow was trapped in when Maria either sends him to Earth or the raid on the Ark happens. You can even see the cracks where Shadow has punched at the glass to get out, just like he does in the games. So how does that work? If she dies via explosion, and Shadow doesn't succeed in escaping the pod, how does this happen? Going through this a second time, I did notice the upper half of the capsule is missing. I guess it is possible for an explosion to, like, blow up the upper half of the capsule. But then, where's the glass in this scene? The only conclusion that I can ascertain is that Maria did something in the same room as this capsule, which is not the same one we see here. I feel like this theory isn't completely solid, but there just seem to be a lot of inconsistencies and plot holes like this. Similar to when you find someone telling a lie.
After the events in San Francisco, a global task force was created, devoted to protecting our planet from alien threats. That day, Guardian Units of Nations was born.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god, stop you fucking lying.
So let's move on to the next case to see if there's any other evidence. Besides the external circumstances of the Ark tragedy, let's talk about the narrative changes that seem to leave a few questions unanswered. First, I want to talk about Gerald. We already know they're doing something drastically different from the games and having him be in the present with Eggman, Sonic, and everyone else, instead of, being executed. But regardless, I want to talk about how he's also in that scene looking over Maria with Shadow. Maria's wish is to protect Earth and to give people a chance to be happy. And there is no doubt that this is going to be a big core movement in the movie, even if this theory is 100% false. But, that being the case, if this is what she tells Shadow and Gerald is there to hear it, then wouldn't Gerald be less inclined to, kill everyone? While I could understand this just going over Gerald's head or him being traumatized into misremembering Maria's final words, there are a few other things that don't line up. Gerald was basically forced to work on Shadow while he was imprisoned, and we do see him in prison in the trailer too. But if this is the case, why wouldn't he have been executed after finishing Shadow? And the answer to that is probably because they can't put a firing squad in a kids movie. So the alternative to that would be they probably cryo-froze him, or he's just been alive that long, maybe he got some of Shadow's DNA or something. But if that's the case, how would the people who are currently working for GUN not know about it? Heck, maybe the new members and Commander Walters, maybe they're the ones being gaslit. Because there was an agent at the end of the Sonic 2 credits that said something like, "Someone worked very hard to keep this hidden." So for all we know, maybe Walters is just telling Sonic what he thinks is the truth when it's actually false. But one more thing I want to touch on for this particular facet of this theory, Shadow is conscious here. I always thought Shadow was caught because when he landed on Earth, he crashed and was unconscious. That's what happens for a second time at the end of Sonic Adventure 2, leading into Sonic Heroes at least. So that would make sense to possibly happen here, right? But you're telling me Shadow is fully awake here, and that he doesn't try to unleash his anger and fight and kill everyone right here, and that he doesn't try to teleport either? And don't say like, oh, it's because he doesn't have the Chaos Emeralds, because he's clearly teleporting without them here. Was he just kind of like, oh gosh, darn it, I guess the jig is up. Let me put my hands up as I walk away, like he's one of those grape dudes from Princess Peach Showtime. The only other scenario that I could see happening is Shadow going willfully after Maria tells him not to fight them or something. But I just see that as kind of a stretch and not what Maria's priority would be to communicate, So remember when I said that this shot of Shadow's face is the biggest reason why I'm doubting my theory? Because there are gun agents in the background. Again, this is definitely how Shadow would react to Maria passing. With that being the case, though, again, there is no way Shadow wouldn't put up a fight. GUN could handle him. But the thing is, he's clearly shown to be too much for them, in the present time at least. If GUN can't deal with Shadow in the present when technology has gotten even better, they couldn't in the past unless Shadow is unconscious. Yeah, so that's my second hypothesis for this theory. It's a little bit on the weaker side, but there is another thing that intrigues me.
You serious?
I did not watch the Knuckles show, and I'm glad, but I've seen clips, and there is one thing that strikes me as interesting. In the final episode, we hear the commentators talk about Knuckles being an alien. But then they also say this.
You know, Gary, I looked it up, and actually this has happened before. There was a visit by an extraterrestrial in the 1974 tourney, but I don't think he was red.
1974? You mean, 50 years in the past? Which suspiciously lines up with the dates of when the Ark incident happens? And you say that the alien wasn't red? Well, I mean, Shadow has a little red, but still. So my guess here is that Shadow's capsule accidentally crashed into the building or landed somewhere near it. Which again, wouldn't line up with what we're shown here. Because if that image is right after Maria's death, when would this bowling thing happen? What else would they be referring to? There's no way they throw in a 50 years ago reference and not have it be connected to Shadow. Though it would be weird to call an alien crashing into a building a visit so casually, but the commentator says he looked it up. So it's quite possible that whatever he saw might have been from eyewitnesses who were forced to keep silent about it, or at least forced to water it down. Look, there are three possibilities here. Shadow crashed into the building, he tried to run from GUN and ran through the bowling alley, which is the only possibility this would line up with in the events we see, and the only possible way that they are not talking about Shadow here is if Black Doom visited so he could frickin' play bowling. So with all this evidence, that leads to the question, why would GUN be gaslighting Sonic? I think the answer to this is pretty obvious. They want to stop Shadow, and they need Sonic's help, but they can't go to Sonic and say, hey, so there's this guy named Shadow who is really angry, and we're kind of the ones who killed his best friend, who was a young girl, by the way, because then Sonic would refuse to be on their side. But if they lie to him and say it was an explosion or an accident, or they water it down, he's far more likely to be cooperative. I do also want to mention that I know it's fairly evident that Walters, or Olive Garden guy, is going to be the movie equivalent to Abraham Towers from the games. Even the uniforms are pretty similar. So it's probable that he won't be one of the soldiers responsible for the destruction of the Ark, considering he was a child at the time, unless they mix it up and make him a young adult or something. That doesn't mean he's not going to gaslight Sonic out of desperation. If this theory is true, which it might not, but if it is, why would Paramount write it this way? Why spend the extra money and resources when they can just outright tell what actually happens? I think, and this might be a stretch, but I think Paramount would do this as a way to ease in audience members who aren't familiar with Shadow's backstory. Think about it, just immediately telling parents who are watching this movie with their kids, hey, this girl gets shot, would probably be pretty off-putting, but if it's established that she dies already, and they cushion it by initially making it seem like an accident, I think it would still have the same impact that it does, and it would have even more later on when the truth is revealed to Sonic that that's not what actually happened. Additionally, the guns are more sci-fi than realistic, so I don't think it would be a case of, oh, we can't imply anything having to do with Guns and Maria at all. In the trailer, when Sonic says, "What did you do?" that's not directed at Shadow. That's directed at either Gerald or the Commander or someone else in GUN. It's probably one of them who's gonna spill the truth, though I could see it being a Shadow. Like if Sonic says something like, "Shadow, you know it was an accident. Why do you blame humanity?" And then that's when Shadow drops like this huge like twist, like plot twist, and he's like, "It was no accident," and that would be something that would also surprise the fans. This would give Sonic character growth too, because he would see that the world and people, they're not just black and white, and he would have to mature to be able to know how to handle that, and kind of have to figure out, what do I do in this situation? But hey, all this is just a and that is why I think that Sonic is being gaslit in Sonic the Hedgehog 3. I'd like to emphasize once more, this theory could be absolutely false, To be honest, I've gone between being completely sure of this theory to extremely skeptical, and I was debating if I should even make this video. There are a lot of possibilities I could have overlooked. Maybe Shadow broke out of the capsule and the explosion happened in another room, or maybe it's in the background and we can't see it, things like that. But it is fun to do this sort of thing, and if by some chance I'm right, I'm not gonna stop bragging about it. I do think it would be weird if Paramount decides to do it this way, but I would be okay with it on one condition, and that condition is that the explosion is intentional. If this theory is wrong, I'm willing to see a different approach to it, but only if it's at least partially deliberate. Because if it really is an accident or an explosion that kills Maria, I feel like it wouldn't have the same impact as in the games where it was the direct action of a human being. One last thing is that Jeff Fowler, who has directed all the movies, was also a developer for Shadow the Hedgehog. If he's been a fan for that long, I don't see how he wouldn't want to make such an iconic scene, which is one of the most well-known in the entire franchise. But hey, we will all know in, less than 2 weeks now. And with that, that's my theory video for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. And if you made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you, and I'm glad you found it fun to watch. I don't really do theory videos, so this is a new one-time thing for me, but I had a blast making it, and I am so happy I could get a video done for the Year's Shadow campaign. So Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all of you. Be cheerful and have peace in your heart this year. God bless y'all. Bye!